Hello students, this is Mr. Emmanuel Shatepa presenting English Module 1. Here are my details. That's a cell phone number and the email there. Contact me between those hours. That's of course 8 o'clock in the morning and 4, Monday through Fridays. So, English, as we have it in Namibia, is a lingua franca. We mean lingua franca because two different people of two different cultures meet and they use a language that is understood by both. It's a lingua franca. So we use English more because we are in a multicultural world. The language, your first language is not the same as mine. So what bridges us is English. So it's very important that we understand and we know and we have the more than just the basic knowledge, because we are teachers. We are not only doing that for ourselves, but also for the people that we teach, in this case, learners and students. So in this study guide or in this module, you will then learn about the structures of that language, how to best communicate it, and also how to apply these things to real life situations. And by the end of this module, at least be able to explain to someone the forms of language and also describe how a good language learning environment should be, because you as a teacher need to create that for your learners. How should my learners be in an environment that is allowing them to learn? Also explain how the barriers can be overcome with coming to communication, how learners' further writing skills can be developed, how also we can write and support learners' writing difficulties, because we have learners who have struggled so many years in their writing. How do you intend to help them? This is what you expect to have the knowledge of by the end of this presentation. Also explain the materials and the methods to teach and assess all these outcomes. Now that you have all these things in place to assess whether they were successful, you need the methods to do that, and you need materials to do that. So for this module, you will be assessed twice. You notice that you will have an assessment, and that is out of 130 mark, you will have an assessment. And in that assessment, it will count for 50%. So it will be a prerequisite to your exam. You need to pass the assessment, you need to pass the assignment to get the entry to the exam. So you need to pass the first thing before you go to the other one. And the examination is also just almost in a similar manner, 130 marks, of course, and then it is 3 hours duration, and you also need to pass that. Your final pass mark is going to be 50%. So when the two are combined, the assignment and the examination, when they are combined, they should give you 50%, because 60% will be counting from your examination, and then 40% will be from your assignment. So at the end of the day, you should have a 50% pass to pass this module. And what is covered in this unit, you have a form in the level of language learning. You have some theories there on language learning. We have some theories but they are not of interest now. Theories on language, second language acquisition. Issues also with learners' listening skills. Okay. Now, you have, as you learn a language, there is a primary one and there is a secondary one. Your secondary language is what you learn after the first language. You first acquire a language at home or anywhere, the first language, that is a primary language. And then you have the secondary language that you learn after you have learned the other one. Some people get a chance or the privilege to learn 2 languages as primary languages, while others get to learn 1 language and then later learn the other one, becoming a second language. So you have an example that we have here. An Oshwambo speaking child has learned English in school. Okay? Oshwambo is, of course, is the primary language because that's the language he or she learned first. And then later they go to school. That's why they say English is a second language for some classes, for some schools, because sometimes English can be a second language. And they learning English as a secondary language because they already have a first language. That is now the difference between the two languages. And we have these skills that one has to acquire before you enter the school. They are not mandatory, and they are not obvious that you will just acquire them before you enter the school. You can learn them through your school life. You can learn them, or you can teach the learners, or you can assure them that they can learn these things as they go in their school life. And that's phonology, that has to do with the sound; morphology, that has to do with the components of a language; syntax, that has to do with putting sentences together; and then semantic, that has to do with meaning; practicality, on how to apply what you know. In other words, how to apply, how to use those words. So, phonology, so that's a sound pattern or in language, and it has to do with the spelling, the intonation you use in the language. We use phonetics, and sometimes, because every word phonetically can be transcribed phonetically on how to pronounce the word. Phonetic helps us to pronounce the words correctly. Those are phonetics words now. Phonetic has a part to play. The sound, how do you say the first part of the sound of the word, and then how do you say the middle part, and how do you say the last part, or if there are two, how do you say the first and the second? So phonetic transcription. If you look in your dictionary, you will see something next to the word definition, and then aside there's a phonetic transcription, because they are helping us on how to pronounce those words, because that's a sound that has to come out, and that has to go to the reader, that has to go to the listener. The listener will get the sound out of that. So there are basic units, phonology in the morpheme, which is an individual speech sound, such as P. How do we make that P? That can often represent by a single grapheme. So all these small chunks in the language have meanings. The P, how do you make this P a sound? How do you produce this P? How do you produce this letter B? So when we have them together, each one of them should be considered when you're reading a language. And when you understand their role of how the two can be read together, you will become a good person who pronounces words correctly, because now you understand how the phonetic works, and you understand how the phonology itself will work, and then your pronunciation will become a better one, and you can be able to teach the children that you are teaching. Morphology, that is now the construction of words, like I said, to come up with words and make them meaningful elements. Okay? In English, there are numerous examples, such as replacement, which is composed of replace and mend. So you see words, when you have a word, you can break it down into smaller elements, which is morphemes. We call them morphemes. We have which means to do something again. Place, which is just can mean a place or put something somewhere. And mend, this is just a component that makes something a noun. And that is a morpheme that has a very important component of a word. So when you put them together, you get a replacement. So this is now morphology. Morphology has to study it's a study of what can be brought together to make up one meaningful word. Each word stands aside. Talks. There is talk and S there. There is S added because it's a singular subject there for some reasons. This is now the grammatical part of morphology, where you understand that every word, every component of a word serves a purpose, and then you construct them internally to make a meaningful word. Okay? Inflectional, we have, of course, like say, grammatical process that I've said, the derivation. Inflectional marks category, such as you want to use tense, like I said, you add S to that. Sings, contains the final marker of third person, adding the S to that. And then derived words can be inflected singers from singer. Okay? Syntax. Syntax, here we have making up sentences. Okay? How the other one, morphology, is making up a word. This one is coming up with an entire sentence. Tom lives in Vanaeda. That has to do with syntax, because you have Tom, you have live, you have in, you have Vanaeda. All this coming together, that's dealing with syntax. So if you see yourself teaching syntax, or you see yourself teaching learners, you may not even see that you're teaching syntax, because what you do unintentionally is teaching them to write a sentence. But overall, you're teaching them syntax, because you're teaching them that the word cannot become this, cannot become before that, and this cannot become that is you indirectly teaching syntax to your student. The proper order of words in a phrase or sentence, they should be proper subject-verb agreement. That's a word order for English per se. There's a subject first in your sentence. There is a verb. There should be a verb. There should be an object for it to qualify as a sentence. When you teach the children like that, you're teaching them syntax. Okay? Semantic. Now that you taught them about the sentences, you need to teach them the meanings of words. Every word has a meaning, unless it's not an existing word. Every word supposedly should have a meaning, unless it's not a word that exists in that particular language. Okay, it should express meaning. And of course, the meaning changes when the word is put in a sentence. Okay, so individually it can mean that. We put them in a sentence, it means something different. You should be able to teach your students how words have meanings in isolation, and when their meanings can change when they are juxtaposed or put into a sentence. You should be able to tell them that and make them understand. So it's just to attempt semantics, to attempt and explicate the knowledge of any speaker on a language which allows the speaker to communicate facts, feelings, intention, and product. So basically just you to communicate the meanings behind your emotions, the meaning behind imagination, your meanings behind your facts. Okay? And then we have pragmatic. So this is now, like I said, the study of how we use words. Okay? How we apply these words into real life. Okay, in our communication, day to day. So we have literal and non-literal aspect. Literal means the exact meaning, and non-literal means the meaning behind the words, because one word can just be put there, but it has another meaning behind it. Okay, so we have an example here. He was poor but honest. He was poor but honest. And you think literally there is a direct translation, and there is a non-literal translation to this. Conventionally, it implicates an unspecified contrast between poverty and honesty. Other aspects include metaphor and other tropes of speech and acts. He was poor but honest. This person may mean something else. May not just mean that the person did not have money and was honest, but the person may mean also that he was poor but honest. He had integrity per se. Integrity that comes when no one is watching, when the person has nothing. The person did the right thing. When the person did not have any sand on him or her, the person still performed honesty. That can be a non-literal meaning. But as you can see, there could be more than just one meaning. That's pragmatic, the use of the words to create more than just one meaning. And then you come to formal and informal language. This is quite direct. Formal, a language that is formal. We use it in interviews, we use it in jobs, we use it many places. And informal, the opposite of formal. It's in our casual speaking. If you're speaking to your friend, because they are mostly affected by the people around you, the relationships you share with the people, the relationship that you have with your boss may allow you to choose the kind of language you use, formal or informal. Because if you are at home and you are addressing kids in the house, or you're addressing people in the house in a formal manner in the kitchen or how to eat, you will see that it's odd, because the area and the setting will not allow you to use that. If you are in a classroom, you of course have to use the formal language. And if you have to use the informal language here in the classroom, it's because you have decided to do so based on some reasons known by you. But those are places that you use the formal language where you use the formality, okay? On forms of informal language, we have spoke about this, it's just the same there. There are forms of informal language. They are not formal. We have colloquialism, which is just for usual conversation, just colloquial. It's just a daily speech. There is nothing formal about it. You do not want to use this colloquialism in professional settings, okay? Other examples are we are in, I am, and you'll, or use. You can see that the person used apostrophes in there, and this is because it's just informal setting. And when we are writing, especially for writing, we write formally if we are writing in a formal setting. The way you text may not be the same as the way you write when you are writing to somebody who has a position, or when you are writing to a company, or you are writing in a formal setting the same. We have slang, informal setting. This is a made-up language, maybe understood only by a few people. You young people are best at this. You have so many slangs that our old people, our old age people understand none of. You can speak of a language that only you guys understand. And in the same manner, the children we have today that we're teaching in the classroom, tomorrow they will come up with languages or words, a slang, that we don't even understand of, because our time has its own slang, and time tells, and the language just evolved. Tomorrow they will have some ways of communicating, or probably they do. They speak about you in the classroom in slang manners that you understand not. It's just how it is. It's a slang, it's understood only by certain individuals. Okay? In jargon, this is professional-wise now. Every profession has its own way that it's used. It's only for that. Health side has that, and it's an inside language. Teachers use curriculum. Teachers use the assessment. Teachers use presentation. Lawyers says the jury, this jurisdiction, all these words. Once a person says that, you will figure that, oh, this person is talking about law, or this person is saying, oh, maternity ward, oh, you here, or this is health something, this is doctor something, this is nurse something, because it belongs to that particular profession, that particular calling, and those are jargon. And then you have denotation and connotation. To denote means you mean that it's what is in the dictionary. What is the meaning of that? What is the meaning of that? What do you denote? What do you mean? The exact meaning. Going means move from one place to the other. That's what you are likely to find in the dictionary. That's the denotation. The connotation, however, it's the implication behind that. It's a figurative way of speaking. It's not on the surface most of the times. It's behind the word there. So you have an example. The stars twinkle in the sky. You can see the word twinkle here just means they are shining bright. If you look at the dictionary, it just means something brighty and shiny in the sky right there. But connotation will say, her brother's surprise visit to the party made her eyes twinkle with happiness. The very same word twinkle is used here. What makes it different is the content. Is the content or context. It's different because of that. That's why we said earlier, words can mean different when they are standing, when they can mean one thing when they are standing alone, but mean something else when they are put into sentences. Twinkling with happiness is here is because the person is the full brim of happiness. Their eyes are rolling, and you can tell the person is happy. So twinkling with happiness, the eye is just being in that state of being happy. And it's the same way there, but connotation has a different way of doing things. Okay? And then you have the second last on this slide now, which is language development. like we mentioned earlier, language development, has to do with moving from one stage to the other, moving from a small to the big one, moving from below to the up. Because you move from one stage to the next as a process, and when it's learning, it's the same thing. A 4-year-old child, a 4-year-old child, a 4-month-old child, a 6-month-old child has to go through the process of learning a language. Okay? Some children may learn faster, some children may skip some stages, but not really entirely, because the mind is set in a way that it acquires minimum knowledge at any stage. And this is how you have to consider the children you're teaching in your classroom. Because if you're teaching the 5 years old, the 7 years old, it will not be the same as somebody who's teaching kids of 13 years old because of their level of the language development. Okay? The sound combination, you will need to see that kids will make the sound as they grow up. Most of you might have seen, have experienced kids growing up. They make certain sounds when they want to communicate. Kids will say BB, or meaning or imitating something of a sound to make sure that they communicate. Okay, so all these are stages towards the development of a language, because they want to communicate and they use what they have in their mind, what is inborn, what is already at the level, and they try to utter something out of that, and that is the early stage. So you have this early stage, which is 14 to 24 months. 24 months, that's 2 years. Okay, so here babies do they do use small words. The example of this include common nouns like glamu, cup, head, and dog. They just label things around them, only the few things around them, not further than that. What they see is what they can deal with. They cannot imagine beyond that. They cannot go beyond that. What they have there is what they deal with. Okay, they are beginning to approximately more closely to an adult model, and they are beginning to be used more constantly. So, babies learn a lot from the people around them during this stage, because they depend entirely on them. Every word you say, this is why we say, watch what you say around the kids, because they pick it up. Their mind is like an open plate, ready to receive whatever you put, because they have no filter. What you say should be right. If you say this, if you're cursing, it can register there. If you're saying positive things, it can register that. This is the stage where they just pick up anything. And then the 2-word stage. This is the stage where they learn 2 words. This is about it's more than 2 years now, to 3 years. This is where they try to form sentences, but just in a 2-word form. They car. They see the father has a car there. Shoe on, they want to put the shoe on. Where Katie? They want to ask where Katie is. They don't have the rules. They don't care about the rules, whether this cannot go here. They want to communicate what they think is understandable. And they can only do that with whatever they have. If it's one word plus the other, whether it's logic or not, that's fine. And it's more like somebody learning a new language. If you have seen, even adults, when they learn a new language, if you're learning French, you don't know French, you don't know Afrikaans, you don't know Portuguese, and somebody say, learn Afrikaans, for a beginner, you will find yourself doing the 2-word stage like a baby. Because now you will say, me go, and you want to find out, how do I say me go, or how do I say I want to go in that particular language that you're learning, but you can just say me go. It's not because you don't know how to say it, it's because your mind is at the early stage level, like a 2-word stage. The mind is at that level within that language that you're learning. So you will put words omitting the others. There's nothing wrong with that. It's because the mind is still registering the rules and everything, and it's at that word stage, and it's the same exactly as the child. And then you have this stage where the child is almost 3 years and above. And here the child has got 3 words now. The child would say, add up 2 more words and more create utterances as long as 4 words. So they may pronounce as I, you, she, they, me at this stage. An example, kiss me, mommy, you break the toy, you hit me, ball. So you can see that a stage has moved, stages from 1 to here, you have moved from just small, you're taking baby steps. They take baby steps. Their minds, their brain operate in that way because they don't go fast as they would want to or you'd want to. They are now making clear and cohesive utterances here. You can see, kiss me, mommy, me, kiss me, mommy, you break toy, he hit ball. You are trying to, if you are listening, you would definitely get the idea, what is behind the meaning here. And then you have forward stage. Now they're getting there because this is now 4 years. They are grown. Some of them at this age, they may still have 3 words. Some of them may be smarter than the others, or the input on the surrounding was so rich for them to pick up something. They may have 5 words or 6 words at this stage. Very possible. That's why I said children development may differ from child to child depending on the environment and the input that is applied to them. So you as a teacher, you are also an environment you have to create and also encourage either parents or other people to make sure that the environment of a child is very well taken care of so that the child either learns fast and learn the things that you guys want to learn them, to teach them. It's a greater use of contrast between proposition, mommy in the little bed, daddy under big car, daddy playing with little ball. So you see the child, at this stage you may also be confused slightly because now the child is making words, assuming now I can make a sentence. He understands what he wants to mean, but he brings everything he knows to life and he says it exactly how it is. But it's now up to you as an adult to make meaning out of this. Because you understand there is ball, there is daddy, there is play, there is whip, there is little, there is ball. Now, daddy playing with little ball, you get that. Mommy in little bed, mommy's in the bed. Daddy under big car, daddy's probably fixing a car. You have to make some inferences here by just listening to the children, and you'll be able to make a conversation with them in that stage. Okay? And then you have a complex utterances stage. This is now, the child is now big here. The child is more than 5 years here. And at this stage, they produce over 6 words, 7, 8, or more even. Some children can even go beyond that. Because the stage, the mind has become mature, is now receptive enough. And it stores, the mind stores words in a schemata. There's a thing called schemata in the mind that stores up. It's like a database. It stores words there. Every stage it has stored words there. Now once those words become too many, at this stage, the child can now utter them and combine them. Because then as she grows up, she learned that this one goes with this and this goes with this because I had who says this or somebody taught me this. Now that the schemata is now activated and they will be good people at processing the language and speaking it. Example, we all went to see Ryan yesterday. You see? Daddy is going to get a shoe. Robert stopped and kicked a good goal. Here, the children they are even considering the grammatical aspect of language. They use the past tense, they know how to use the present, they know how to do that. Sometimes they may confuse them up, but you can see that their words are in logic, their words are in good order. They are grammatical, of course, except that we went to see grandma, or we will see grandma, but they are already seeing grandma right then. They have developed now a better knowledge, and they can now do better. Lastly, listening. Now that we have spoken about the children, we need to listen to them and to other people, and you need to listen to your learners in the class. Your learners need to listen to you. You want them to listen to you. And if there's something that teachers get frustrated about mostly is when their learners are not listening to them. It's very, very frustrating. But funny enough, teachers too sometimes may not listen to them. We want them to listen to us, but we also don't listen to them. But here's the thing. If you want them to listen to you, you listen to them. Listening is a two-way thing. You listen to them, they will listen to you. Or if you don't listen to anybody else, you do the listening elsewhere, and you see how you struggle or how best you do it, and then you transfer the kind of way, and the way you listen to your learners. Then you have your learners listening to you. Because listening, for learners to listen does not mean you shout at them. Because many teachers would just want to shout at our children, or they want to shout at the children. Yes, they are kids. You want to make sure that they understand that you want to be listened to. But you have to listen, and when you listen, you don't just listen with the ears, you listen with your heart. You have to show them that you listen from your heart. They have to see that I'm being listened to. The same way you would do when somebody's listening to you. You want them to listen with your heart. You want somebody to hear and understand, okay? So there is hearing and there is listening. That's a difference. And speaker will know if the person he's speaking to is listening to or randomly asking that question. However, this can be a tricky one when it comes to learners if they are young, because they are easily distracted. They are focusing, and concentration span is very limited. Kids can only listen so long. So that's why we use games, we use fun ways of doing things. Otherwise, you just train your voice, you just frustrate yourself asking the students to listen, but after some time, they will not really listen. So you need to have a strategy and approach. That's why at the beginning we introduced this. We said you need strategies and methods and materials that will help you to achieve all these objectives and outcomes. Use any mean that will work and keep and retain the attention of your learners. Whatever works for them, for you, for the class, use that to your advantage. If they listen when you speak funny, when you speak loud, when you speak that way, use that to your best advantage. But if he learns that the receiver is able to understand what he's just conveying, then the process of interpretation and communication. So when people are listening, when anybody is listening to you, they want to make sure that they are being listened to. And when they do, then it becomes successful, because then you are encouraged to speak further. You are encouraged to go on because the person is listening to you. And it's the same way you want your learners to listen to you. You want to make sure that they are listening, so you continue. Okay? Proactively just means you are active. Okay? Listening actually a two-way communication and not one way, as the others believe or perceive so. Like I said earlier, it goes both ways. When two persons are communicating with each other, an effective process interpersonal will require the use of asking questions while other persons are speaking. This may not apply to your classroom with younger people. If you are a primary teacher, you may not apply this, because if you have to interact with your children while you're teaching, you will not go anywhere. You need a 90-10 or 80-10 percentage where you do much of the talking, not so much of the talking, and let the learners come in, because they need to listen, because their minds are that if you tell them that you need to speak to me every now and then, you will be questioned. They will just do that and they will interact the class and they will disrupt the class. You want to make sure they're listening, but importantly, you want to make sure that they are understanding. It's one thing to listen, but it's another to understand. Am I being clear? Am I being understood? Am I articulating enough? Am I explaining enough something to you as a child, to you as a learner, to you as a student? Because if I understand what you're saying, I have the interest to listen. But if you're just talking, I can listen, but what's the use? At the end of the day, I will have wasted your time because I didn't catch anything. So conversation made more richer and interesting. Also, asking questions will keep the conversation in the right direction. Learners, sometimes you want them to ask questions if they don't understand, which sometimes come hard because their English is not well, they're scared, they're shy. There are many reasons why learners don't ask us. They're scared of us in the classroom, they're scared that their peers will laugh at them. All these things are many. But you encourage them, you create an environment for learners to be able to ask you. This is the same way when you are teaching somebody, or you're talking to somebody out there, you want them to ask you, and then when they ask you, you are sure that, yes, they're paying attention, they're listening to me. And last one, 3 basic processes in the listening. You first have to hear, and you have to understand, number 2, and then you have to evaluate. Okay? Did I get the speaker first, what the person said? Number 2, you have to be able to make meaning of what was said. Now that I heard what the speaker said, let me say, what did he mean? What did she mean? And then the last one is, it's just you able to reason about what you heard, because you have to respond. If you just hear and then you make meaning of it and then you respond, you will respond things for the sake of just responding. And the person and the speaker will really tell that you're not really listening, you're just saying things for the sake of saying things. But you need to evaluate, how do I respond to this person after they've spoken to me? Okay? And then the last part, which is a taboo for teachers. A lesson plan, teachers, is a guideline of how a lesson should go. A lesson plan is a guideline, it's a document, it's a plan, like it says, plan of how a lesson should go. But be prepared for anything. Leave room for what is happening, because you're dealing with individuals with different needs. You're dealing with the different individuals who can change based on their moods. So if you are rigid and fixed on just one thing and not ready for what can happen, you're doomed to fail. You will not reach those objectives, trust me. But if you're a teacher who plans ahead, over plan, which is good, and plan for the unexpected, you will have a great class. Also, you have to make sure that it's detailed enough that the next person can use the very same document when you are not there. Anything can happen. Today you plan your lesson for Monday. During the week, something happens, something comes up, you'll not be able to come to class. Can you give the lesson plan that you made to somebody else to use it? Or did you just plan in a way that only you can do it? Because if you plan your classes in only ways that you can teach them, then you are not a teacher that is teaching people for tomorrow, because you're teaching people your way. You have to teach people and plan in the way that anybody else can do that. A teacher is a broad library, walking one. The teacher should have this book, this book, this book. In other words, components that you have should allow the next person to jump in and say, yes, with this plan, I can do something. Format may differ, by content must be different, because then you have a syllabus to copy, you have a year planner. This week we are teaching that. We will base our teaching on these basic competency. Our objectives are these. You may use a different format, that's fine. Based on your class, based on your school, based on your faculty, if it's a university. But then the objective should be met, should be the same, and you should do justice to these children by making sure that you are inclusive enough of what can happen during those classrooms. Okay, and that's that. Good luck. I hope you will deliver the best of your abilities.